Hello and welcome back to the Sussex Azure User Group podcast. Sorry, it's been a little while. This is episode 27. As always, I'm joined by my friend and colleague Ryan. How are you, Ryan?
Well, good, thanks, Jack. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Life has certainly got in the way, I think, of us doing this podcast in the recent weeks,
It's
months
been
even.
manic. Yeah, it's been just seems like only yesterday it was summertime and the sun was shining. Took the dog for a walk this morning. It's freezing cold now, so
Yeah, it's getting dark in the evenings. It's all rolling in. Winter is certainly on its way.
it is. Times are flying by.
Indeed. So this week we're going to do a bit of an Ignite roundup, like as we typically do for all of these big events. Myself and Ryan have dipped our toes into some of the Ignite stuff when we've had 5 minutes alongside our work commitments. And obviously we're still in the middle. We're recording this on Thursday. So we've still got like sort of a day left to go of Ignite, but a lot of the announcements that we want to talk about are already announced and out there. So as always, it's probably got an infra focus, is fair to say, Ryan, right? Like
I think
our
so,
infra
yeah.
security focus.
Yeah, I mean it's our backgrounds, right? And it's the first thing that we look at when these announcements come out. But yeah, I mean the list that we put together of stuff that we're just going to just highlight is stuff that jumped out to us. But obviously, if you're kind of data or AI focused, or even on the M365 stack as well, your list will probably differ to ours. But we thought we'd share anyway because some of the announcements around, particularly the infra networking storage space, are pretty cool.
Yeah, and I would say like go and check out the keynote that's already up on YouTube, and we'll leave a link to everything we talk about today in the show notes. So please go and check out the website for links to blog posts, tech community articles, all of those good things to go and learn more about these. But we'll dive into a few of them in a bit more detail. But we'll probably rattle through, as Ryan said, a lot of these just to get through the sheer amount that we've got. So I suppose with that, Ryan, do you want to kick us off with the first one? And obviously, it had to be a rename.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't be an Ignite without a product rename.
Absolutely.
So this time is very focused around the security stack, right? So we've had Azure Sentinel, Azure Security Center, parts of that were renamed to Azure Defender a while back. But big news is Azure Defender has been renamed to Microsoft Sentinel now, which I think makes sense, right? Because it can cover multiple Microsoft products as well as other clouds on-prem and everything. It's quite diverse. It's not just focused on Azure. So yeah, Azure Sentinel is now Microsoft Sentinel. So we'll be making that mistake for the next 3 months until our brains kind of get rewired. I'm still saying WVD all the time. But the other one is Azure Security Center and Azure Defender is now known as Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I don't know if that's changed in the portal yet, Jack. I think it's still called Security Center.
It's still Security Center in some places. Obviously, that'll roll out over the next few weeks. But if you go on the Security Center documentation pages, there's a lovely purple notice right at the top that says these have been renamed and this is it. So hopefully you won't miss it. But yeah, you'll see some of the screenshots announced that it's all saying Microsoft Defender for Cloud for Security Center and Azure Defender. And the Azure Sentinel stuff has now got Microsoft Sentinel all over it. So I would expect over the next few weeks to see that to roll out as it goes through sort of deployments. So yeah, like keep an eye out for that. But definitely happened, definitely renamed. And I think me and you were discussing this a little bit earlier. Like it makes sense. They are multi-cloud. They are not specific to Azure products. It makes complete sense to rename these as part of a wider security suite.
And I'm interested how they're going to integrate that with like the security and compliance portal that's part of the Office 365 stack. I think that will become a standalone thing. Be interesting to see how all of our security products come together in a single place, if they will or not. But obviously, there's so many of them now. It probably makes sense to centralize.
Yeah, and I think outside of the Azure world, I know we said this isn't focused, but a couple of announcements that I know there that were quite interesting. There's now a Microsoft Defender for Business, which is for SMC customers, so up to 300 users, which is the typical stuff for that. But they can now get the benefits of Defender as well for endpoint. And then there's also like Defender DLP for Mac OS was out, and the other rename that happened in the stack, I think, was Cloud App Security is now Microsoft Cloud for Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps or something like that. Okay. So they've all been renamed to follow a very similar branding stuff, which I think makes absolute sense because they are not just focused on the Microsoft products. They are truly like multi-cloud, multi-SaaS provider. They protect everything. So yeah, some big renames in that space. But yeah, don't worry, you didn't miss it. It wasn't formally announced. It was sort of one of those hidden things. It just appeared in a slide, and I was like, that's just Microsoft Sentinel. I was like, okay, this is more serious. So yeah, a few things like that, but yeah, an important one nonetheless.
stuff. Another big one that stood out for me was there's been a lot of announcements around Azure Arc. I think it went GA over 12 months ago now, Azure Arc, but there's loads and loads of new capabilities. I think we saw some new things announced back in March for things like Arc enabled for Kubernetes and IoT devices as well. The one for this Ignite is Arc for vSphere. So obviously our previous talk was about AVS and running VMware workloads in Azure, which has really exploded in the last 6 months. I think I'm having customers about AVS chats with customers about AVS like pretty much on a daily basis at the moment. So really buoyant. But Arc for vSphere now in preview, it's going to be really cool to see how we can manage vSphere clusters using the same management plane enabled with Arc and applying the same governance. I haven't played with it yet, and I haven't really read a huge amount into it. But Jack, have you seen any of the capabilities there? Exactly what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I've known about it for a little while, obviously. But there's basically an Arc resource bridge VM or appliance that you install into your vSphere cluster, and that acts as the middleman between basically your vSphere cluster on premise or wherever it is, and to obviously the Azure control plane or Arc. And therefore, there's just one appliance there. That appliance can also do things like install all the agents on all the VMs automatically for you within that cluster if you want to, or it can act as a proxy. Like there's some flexibility in that. But yeah, really cool. And obviously it's in preview, so go and give it a go now. And I think it's building that bridge between the worlds where you can even create VMs from Azure now, like self-service VM creation. So think about this: if your developers have got access to the Azure where you've registered this Arc appliance to, they can go and create a VM from the Azure portal that will deploy a VM template that you've got predefined on your on-prem vSphere cluster. So you can literally create a VM on your VMware cluster from Azure. Like really cool, because you think about the possibilities that expands. If you're moving to the cloud and you're trying to drive that sort of cloud-first approach, the only thing they ever access is Azure. And then actually, if you need it to be on-prem for any reason, they can still do it via Azure, and there's no other process to follow. So yeah, some really cool things, all obviously locked down with RBAC and stuff like that, so you can control it. But yeah, really cool.
So that's super interesting. So it's taking not just the visibility of that state, but also being able to make changes to it as well.
Exactly.
Which is kind of like reusing hardware, or if you've made a migration to cloud and you've got some legacy hardware that you want to do development workloads on, you could reuse that, but just use Azure as the kind of management plane for that. That's really cool. Yeah. It's like a lightweight Azure stack in a way, if you think about it. If you could developers have access to that. That's really cool to hear. Okay, I'm mindful that we're going to make it super short and snappy, and we're not going to go into a rabbit hole and everyone.
So we're 2 into about 50. Yeah, exactly.
We said we'd keep this to 15 minutes, but we're probably let's just keep
the next
going.
few we could rattle through. All right. So the next one is on-demand capacity reservation. So I think we talked about this when it was first sort of announced as private preview. It's now public preview, and GA is hopefully early next year. But allows you to basically get, I think they mentioned somewhere around April, there's maybe a possibility there, so that we'll keep an eye on that. But I think very quickly, on-demand capacity reservations is you can basically guarantee the capacity for VMs SKUs in an Azure region. So say you always need to have something for a high importance workload, like, I don't know, cloud editing desktops for production companies. You can't afford to never have that VM not available to you. You can buy a different type of reservation called a capacity reservation that will let you guarantee that capacity in that region. So you always will be able to boot that machine in that region. So yeah, pretty cool. And it's very different to cost reservations, right? So you still need both if you want the cost benefit as well. So don't get confused with those.
It's just making sure that the VMs are available to you. So I've got a bunch of customers that use NV powered VMs, editing desktops, need that GPU capability, but obviously there's a finite amount of them available in every region. If you always need access to 10 of them, for example, but they're not always powered on, you'll scale out to that. You can use on-demand capacity reservations to make sure that you can always scale to the amount that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really cool that. So keep an eye on that one. Some new VM tiers, right? So it wouldn't be an Ignite without more VM tiers, as always. So we've got the DV5 and EV5, which are Intel based on the Xeon Platinum E370Cs. I think it's the Ice Lake stuff. Yeah, it's the Ice Lake stuff.
So they're like VMs, right? So
Yeah, general purpose
hardware
VMs. Yeah,
architecture.
new hardware, and as always, will be cheaper than the previous generations, more efficient, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, well worth just looking if you're on older versions of the DV series. Well worth evaluating whether you can upgrade and move to these newer SKUs because you may make a cost saving and get a performance boost.
Yeah. And with those DV5s, we've also got the DAV5 VMs, which are pretty much the same, but they use AMD architecture, right? So third generation AMD CPUs. I think the Milan chipset.
Yeah, the epic stuff, right?
Yeah. So they are nearly as performant, but significantly cheaper in cost if you compare the two, right? So it's definitely worth a look, and it's good to see more AMD CPUs available in the Azure platform.
Definitely really popular, I'm finding at the moment as well.
Let's move on to security networking. Jack's favorite baby.
So we need like a little banner that pops out, like the Jack networking section, and like a little breakout. But we'll work on that for future episodes. But yeah, I'll rattle through some of these. Right, so we've got new troubleshooting things for Azure Firewall and VPN gateway and Azure Monitor. So new workbooks, new metrics, all that sort of stuff. So go and check those out. Well worth a look. ExpressRoute had a few, so FastPath, which isn't very commonly used, but basically cuts out the hop through an ExpressRoute gateway. So the connection is effectively directly to the VNet and the resources there. It cuts out the gateway as a hop. That's now available in public preview for peered VNets, which has never been available. So that's really cool to see. It's going to enable a lot of it's going to change architectures, right? I remember designing architectures that had to have separate VNets attached to ExpressRoutes just to utilize FastPath because we couldn't use VNet peering, but now we can. So some of those architectures may change, which is good to see. A really big one for those networking nerds out there. BGP communities for private peerings is in public preview. So being able to specify a BGP community for your Azure VNets, and then obviously learn that BGP community and be able to do things with it on-prem in your route maps. Really, really cool. We'll put links to it. Go and check it out, but public preview. Bastion Standard SKU, this was announced a little while ago, right? In preview.
It was, yeah. So actually, I'm thinking back. I think one of our second meetups in person, we did a quick session. I think I did it on Bastion being announced, why you'd use it, why it's better than jump bots. And actually, it's really good to see that Bastion's matured. So we've got this new standard SKU that's just gone generally available. What it gives you over the basic is scaling for the hosts. You can specify the custom inbound port as well. So if you want to change 3389 to something else for security reasons or anything else, you can change that with a standard SKU, but not basic. You can also connect to Linux VMs using RDP on standard, and also to Windows VMs using SSH. So role reversal there. But yeah, that's cool that that's available.
Yeah, and I think if you're on Basic today or the original Bastion, you can just click a button and upgrade as well, which is really nice. So there's a nice easy path to upgrade for you there as well. A big one.
If you can.
No, I don't think you can go back. Like I from my memory, and it's typical Azure, right? You can always go up but not back. So yeah, I don't think you can go backwards. And why would you want to, right? You've got all those amazing features. Why would you ever want to go back? The big one that I think has been waiting for a long time is Azure Virtual Network Manager is now in public preview. I think this deserves a separate episode where we go into this and talk about it in a bit more detail because it's very cool. So basically, very quickly, managing VNets at scale can be difficult for customers. Like, once you get like 200-300 VNets, managing all of them and managing the configuration of their peerings and all that stuff can just become a bit of a laborious task. Virtual Network Manager makes this a lot easier. So you effectively define configurations. So you can say, I have a pattern that's full mesh. I have a pattern that's hub and spoke. I have a pattern that is, just a few appearing together. And you effectively then apply that based on a set of criteria, which could be management group, subscription, tags, combination of all three. And then it will basically, you can say, hey, scan all of my VNets, and it will go, okay, I've spotted all these VNets that match your criteria. And then you can apply a configuration. And based on what you said, it will go and do all the peerings for you, full mesh them, all of that sort of stuff. So it doesn't get around any of the limitations of the platform, like the max peering limits, but it helps you configure that at scale a lot easier. And also the other thing is admin security rules, right? So you may, as a security team or a platform team, want to block RDP inbound from the internet across the entire platform, full stop. Well, you now, instead of having to write policies to do that in NSGs, you can now actually put in something called an admin security rule, which sits above NSGs. So you can set a priority rule 1 that says block RDP from the internet across everything. Apply that again across the same criteria, and even if your platform, your workload team create an NSG rule that allows that traffic in, your rule always takes precedence over theirs because it's applied first. So you just stop that bad practice from happening. So really, really cool. And I think in combination with policy will be really, really powerful.
Definitely need to do a session on this. I'd be interested to know whether there's any notification or anything on the NSG that says this is being overwritten, or that I'm just seeing some kind of fault finding thing. Why is this not working? Somebody's
it's really good. So to cover that question, when you go on the effective security rules, you see the virtual network manager admin security rules that are in the same place. So when you look at the effective rules, it shows you which ones have come. Yeah, so it's there. So that is something that we will like. That needs to be there from the start, because that's going to be a nightmare, as you say. Like going, well, it says it's allowed, but it's not working.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like you say, Jack, separate session. Maybe we could pull together a demo or something like that to show.
Definitely. Yeah, really, really powerful this though. So yeah, definitely check that out. The other one, last one from networking for now, is the Azure Gateway Load Balancer, right? So this is in preview and is really useful for those MVA scenarios, or maybe where you want DDoS in line protection or some packet capturing, whatever you want to do for this. But the really nice thing with Gateway Load Balancer is no UDRs. It's all to do with service chaining. So it's only for internet inbound egress, internet inbound ingress at the moment. So if you've got a public IP or a load balancer with a public IP on it, you can then set its chain to be the next, its next in the chain is the gateway load balancer, and then we'll make it go to your backend pool behind the gateway load balancer, which will be your NVAs. And the nice thing with this is that there's no UDRs, because it's all to do with service chaining and done in the SDN fabric behind the scenes, which is cool. And also, you don't have to worry about source NAT and symmetry with routing. So whereas before with MVAs, you'd have to, source NAT everything to make sure it went back to the same MVA node. You don't have to do this here, because it uses some clever technology behind the scenes to make sure that happens automatically for you. And it preserves the original source IP, which is also a bit of a bugbear for some people, where they'd see traffic hit their end VMs and it would appear from the NATed IP address of firewall. Now you see the source original IP address that it came from. So that enables a few more scenarios as well. So really, really cool. Great documentation for this already. Go and check it out. And again, maybe something we'll do another bit of a networking overview.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll include, Nick, links for all of the things that we've spoken about, and just a quick summary of every announcement that we've made in the show notes. But yeah, it's kind of swiftly moving on. We've got a load of announcements around storage and particularly disks as well. So in public preview now, you can do live resize of disks for dynamically increasing capacity without downtime, which is great to see.
There are some limitations for this, right? Just to call it out. So I think it's only available in one of the US regions at the moment, but obviously that'll expand as demand comes out. And it's only for data disks, not for OS disks at the moment.
Okay, that's good to know. On-demand disk bursting as well is GA now.
GA, yeah,
fantastic.
For premium disks.
So so for premium and ultra disks.
I think it's just for premium at the moment.
Okay, so you can basically dynamically burst the throughput on those disks for a period of time if you need to, which is great if you need to run a very storage intensive workload, but you don't need that additional disk performance permanently. You can just burst that. We'll put some links on how you do that. And cross-region snapshot copy for disaster recovery scenarios is now in preview as well.
I think that's going to enable some really interesting DR scenarios where people make snapshots and then replicate them across to the other region. I think that's interesting to see how that's going to evolve. But yeah, no, some good disk updates there, and it's just amazing. Like, we take all these things for granted, right? It's just storage, but still so much innovation is going on behind the scenes in storage. It's incredible. So like, some of these things are going to really make people's lives easy, especially that dynamically increasing without downtime. That's going to change, not having to deallocate a VM to resize a disk.
Yeah.
People are going to be very happy.
I mean, like, thinking back when managed disks became available, they're very rigid, couldn't really do a lot with them. Capabilities both on, scaling and performance really come on in the last 12 months.
Indeed.
Right, so next one is one of my favorites, which is AVD. So auto scale is now in preview. If you were using the PowerShell script that came with AVD to do scaling, it's been around for a while, but that's now kind of all baked into the portal. You can do scheduling to shut down idle hosts for off-peak hours. It's got multiple schedules and usage patterns that you can put in. It's fully integrated in the Azure portal as well. So you can set up scaling patterns. I mean, maybe this is another one that we could do a quick session and a demo on at some point, because I think this is a really good capability that a lot of people have been using third parties to do, and now it's a native capability. Another one is AVD on Azure Stack HCI. Now, Jack and I were talking about it quite a lot before we pressed the record button, and I was interested to know how that's going to work, because surely that's RDS, right? That's but what it actually is you use the AVD management plane in Azure, and then you basically run your session host on something on an Azure Stack environment. So that's really cool. I think again, maybe an AVD update session to go into the details in terms of how this works, how you manage it, how you provision it is something on the cards as well. Azure Backup. Do you want to cover the multi-user all stuff, Jack?
Yeah, just before we move on, I think the really important message with AVD on Azure Stack HCI as well is that it's now so it has to be Azure Stack HCI. So keep that in mind, and you can also then run AVD multi-session, so Windows 10, 11 multi-session on Azure Stack HCI on-prem. So before you could only run multi-session in Azure. This is now enabling a capability where you can run it wherever you need it, but it has to be Azure Stack HCI. And I think that's a really important message. But yeah, really, really cool. Azure Backup, as Ryan was saying, the multi-user auth stuff is mainly around more of like the management and the risky operations in backup, right? So I've been asked this a few times. I know you've probably been asked a few times from customers, Ryan, like what happens if an admin's got owner permissions and wants to delete my backup vault?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, okay, they can do it, but they also then have things like they might need to do MFA, or they might need to you've obviously got like soft delete that you could get it back if somebody had deleted that, but that still didn't stop them from doing it, right? Now with this multi-user auth feature in preview is, say me and Ryan both had the same permissions on a recovery vault, and I said I'm going to delete this recovery vault and this backup. Ryan would then have to go in and approve and basically confirm the same thing, right? So it's basically double approval. It's like almost like PIM for PIM for backups, right? So making sure that people authenticate what we're doing. So yeah, very, very cool. And the last one is multiple backups for Azure files every day. So yeah, lots to cover there. Lots of cool things, but yeah, I would say we'll leave links to everywhere in the show notes. Go and check them out, and as always, let us know on Twitter if you want to hear about anything else.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Jack. One quick announcement, kind of separately to Ignite. We're looking at trying to get a face-to-face session in potentially before the end of the year. So our kind of old faithful of everybody that used to join us face-to-face at the Skiff in Brighton, we're looking at potentially doing something there. Maybe early December, but the numbers are very limited. I think we've probably got a max of 20 people. So if you're interested, please let us know. We'll probably put a poll and a link to an invite out on LinkedIn and Twitter in the next week or so. But we're thinking of just an informal meet. Jack's kindly volunteered to do maybe an in-person session on enterprise scale as well. So if you're interested in meeting the guru himself and attending that session, please do come along. But like I said, it's limited numbers. So please only sign up for a ticket if you can definitely come. Otherwise, you'll be blocking a place for somebody else.
Absolutely. But yeah, watch out for more details on that. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up, right? 20-ish minutes, not too bad for us. Yeah, we'll keep it there. But yeah, catch you all soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.